Now we have a little problem going on here, and that is, if you remember at the beginning of or somewhere in the last episode, I was saying that I thought this 3/8 inch bit looked kind of big. Well, yeah, I tested it out. I'm glad I did, because get this out of here. A little bit stiff. Okay. So anyway, I drilled it out, and I tested it, and you can see, there's just way too much play here. So that's the 3/8. Now the next bit that I had sized down in this style was an 11/32. That's 22/64. Now if you test that one out, it's perfect. It's just right. Anyway, I do have a bit that's in between the two, which is a 23/64, but it's this style here, and I'm not too wild about this style for drilling through pen blanks. I find that these brad point and parabolics work a lot better. So anyway, bottom line is, if you're getting this kit, just remember 3/8 is wrong. Okay, what you need is 11/32. So yeah, just thought I'd mention that. Now I almost always eyeball the drill bit against the brass tube before I actually drill out the blanks. I don't necessarily drill out a test hole like I did here, but because it was obviously wrong, that's why I drilled out the hole. However, let's assume that you'd gone ahead and drilled out a 3/8 inch hole in your blank, and you thought, oh, now what am I going to do? Well, obviously CA glue thick is not going to accommodate a gap like that, but epoxy glue will. So mix yourself up some 5-minute epoxy so it takes 10 minutes longer. At least you'd save the day, or save your blank. I make these videos as I go along here, and I didn't realize that the website now had the correct size in the instructions. So I guess when I printed mine out about a month ago, it still had the incorrect size. And if you happen to order this kit, in all likelihood, you're going to get the correct instructions. Anyway, I'm glad this is sorted out. This is about 2.5 power. This goes from 8 power through to, I think it's 56 power, something like that. And what I'm doing is, I'm trying to see if I can see bubbles inside this little piece that I cut off yesterday. And I've only found 3. I thought I'd see a lot more. So, bottom line is, there are bubbles in there still. Even though it was compressed, the pressure did not get rid of the bubbles. It only made the bubbles smaller. In other words, I think we went up to 9 bar yesterday. In other words, 9 times atmospheric pressure. So that would mean that the bubble that I see here was 9 times larger originally, not in size, but in volume. There's a difference. Anyway, it did make it smaller, and I can't see it at all. I mean, even if I put on my reading glasses, I can't see it. But I can see it with this. But the bubbles are still there. Now, I'm wondering about something, and we're going to go up to the computer, we're going to talk about it. This morning I woke up about 4:30. I could not get back to sleep. And I started thinking about my pen project here and about the bubbles that's in that Envirotex. And got to wondering, how many bubbles there were in there. How much would I be able to see? And I started drawing things out on the computer here. And you can see I've got an end-on view of the pen blank and the scraper, and those 2 little blue circles, they represent a couple of oversized bubbles. Now I realize I'm not drawing everything to scale here, but I think you're going to be able to get the idea anyway. So, when the pressure comes on, the bubble gets about 9 times smaller in volume, because we went up to 9 bar. Now when the blank gets turned down and gets round, the scraper is getting closer and closer to the bubble. Now you have to understand that those little bubbles, they're still under pressure. They have to be, unless the EnviroTest is sort of porous and the pressure sort of leaks out, but I don't think so. I think that those little bubbles are still at 120 pounds pressure. Now, because they're so small, they're not going to crack the EnviroTex. However, they're still under pressure. Now let's really stretch our imagination for a moment, and let's assume everything was dead quiet. Nothing was making any noise. In other words, the dust collector was dead quiet, the lathe wasn't making any noise, the scraper scraping on the blank wasn't making any noise. Everything was dead quiet. Now, of course, we're still pretending, and the scraper, which isn't making any noise, is going to pass over the edge of the bubble and expose it to the room pressure, which is about 9 times less than what the bubble is. Does the bubble make a tiny little exploding sound? Sort of like when you pinch bubble pack. Only a lot more quiet. Anyway, that's what I was thinking about this morning. No wonder I can't sleep. Okay, enough for my vivid imagination here. Let's get those blanks drilled out, the brass tubes glued in, and maybe, while we're turning it down, if we're really lucky, we might hear it. But I don't think so. Now it is possible, but I don't think so, but this EnviroTex may possibly have a reaction with the CA glue, the same as a curing agent does. So I'm just going to put a little bit on here and just leave it for a while and see what happens now. Leave it for a couple of minutes. You know, if it hasn't cured in a couple of minutes, it obviously doesn't have a reaction. So okay, that's 2 minutes. Let's wipe it off and see what it looks like where it was touching the EnviroTex. Try not to get it on my fingers. Offhand, I'd say it doesn't have a reaction, so it's not going to all of a sudden set up inside my pen blank. Now, another thing I found that moisture in your skin will, cause CA glue to set up faster. And I guess you probably already know all about that. However, when I was handling the brass tube here, obviously I got a lot of, skin oils and stuff like that on it, on the brass tube. So just using a little isopropyl alcohol here, just, sort of helps. Because these pen blanks here, I can't replace those. So if I screw it up, I'm screwed. Another thing, speaking of pen blanks, is if there's a lot of moisture in your pen blank, that will also cause the CA glue to cure faster. Well, I think I pretty well got this one. I'll just be careful not to touch it. And I think we're ready to glue here. Okay, so now I want this end to cure. That way I can pull the other end out that has the elastic band on. Just give it a couple of minutes here, a few seconds rather. Don't want to wait too long. Otherwise, if there's any CA glue on the elastic band, it makes it a lot harder to clean out the brass tube later. And about 30 seconds has passed now. I have to go really slow here because I have on occasion been fooled. I've thought it should be cured and it didn't, and it pulled the brass tube out on me. There we go. Now we'll just get that off and I'll use my spike for the other one. Now obviously I've got to clean out the inside of the brass tubes yet. However, I've got another little consideration going on here, and that is that I do not have a shaft the exact size of the inside of the brass tubes. It's either too big or it's a little bit too small. Just a little bit. Now this one is the next size down. I've just measured it, and I measured this one to be 6/1000ths of an inch smaller than this one. But I'm going to use the one that's even smaller. And the reason being is this one is the type that has the sharp cutting edge on it. And I have found that it is very easy while the drill press is going down, that if this is at a bit of an angle one way or the other, and if this is not the exact size, there's a chance of enlarging the inside of your brass tube. So even though this one here is a little bit smaller, not really noticeably smaller, but it's 6/1000ths of an inch smaller, I'm going to use this one because it won't damage the inside of the brass tube. If you enlarge the inside of the brass tube, you're going to end up having to glue in your pen parts. And I've had to do that. Not very often. Not very professional either. However, this is the one I'm going to use. But first, I'm going to have to make sure I get all the residue out of the inside here. Now what I've done is I've trimmed down the ends a little bit with the sled, and that way I have less trouble cleaning off the very ends just past the brass tube. However, this end, for instance, when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, it's okay, there's nothing in there. But then I realized that the elastic band had smeared the epoxy, or rather the CA glue, and you can see here, that there was a little bit. So it's really important that you clean out the brass tubes. Otherwise, as I've said before, but if you're new and into this, you may not know this, and it's extremely important because the pen parts will bind, and you could end up breaking your pen press or something, or damaging one of the parts. So it's really important that you get all the residue plowed out. And also you have to be careful not to enlarge the brass tube, which is very easy to do with one of these very sharp cutters. So anyway, we're almost ready to use the barrel trimmer here. Where's the other one? Now there's something that you have likely noticed about me before, and that is I cannot talk and make sense while I'm doing something. Now I've been told that's a man thing. Now mind you, it was a woman that told me that, but obviously she was right. I think you get the idea. I fully realize that when I started out here just over 12 hours ago right now, I really did think that I was going to be turning this afternoon. However, things got more involved and I had other things to do. So, I'm sorry for those of you who are hoping to see turning today. We'll just have to put it off for the next video. Anyway, thanks for watching.